Apologies, I have a very intense cold after attending a con, so I'm going to sound a little congested for a while. Thank you for putting up with it. Hi, I'm Dorian, or Leviathan of my friends, and I'm an eldritch abomination lurking in the corners of your attic. I also happen to be a digital artist who has been obsessed with Dragon Age since I became aware of its existence in 2014. So you can imagine the utter chaos it was when Dragon Age the Veilguard was announced last week. My husband and I were both emotionally wrecked by the gameplay reveal and also the companion trailer, and I was definitely thrown back into an intense hyperfixation on one of my special interests. Since all of that was revealed, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out who those two elven gods were at the end of the trailer. Of course, we now know, according to Gameinformer, that the gods are Elgernon and Gillenon, but ever since reading that article, I also think I accidentally not predicted is a strong word, but theorized the entire plot of Dragon Age about 5 years ago, and possibly predicted a few things about Veilguard as well. Whoops. Of course, most of the fandom probably has the same set of theories surrounding the games. I'm not saying I'm special, as much as I am a Leo. At the very least, I think it would be interesting to share what I think will happen within the series itself. And it all starts with the Blight is a horrifying disease bordering on a magical curse that corrupts all those who come in contact with it. Ogres, genlocks, herlocks, shrieks, broodmothers, and archdemons, terrifying creatures that have plagued us since the release of Dragon Age Origins in 2009. But what exactly made these creatures? What caused this disease to ravage the land of Thedas and nearly wipe out civilization 5 times? Unfortunately, there isn't much of a definitive answer. Chantry scholars and Androstianism try to tell us that the Blight is a punishment from the Maker, and even the dwarves themselves, who have had the most contact with the Blight, don't even know where the Blight came from. It just happened one day. In Tevinter, all we see are people saying that the Blight always existed. Great way to take responsibility for that. All we know is that the religious orders of Thedas blame the Magisters for having corrupted the Golden City with their magic and practice of paganism. Corypheus, the primary antagonist of Dragon Age Inquisition, has nothing to say about the Blight either. All he has is this amazing monologue that practically any Dragon Age fan has memorized at this point.
I once breached the Fade in the name of another to serve the old gods of the Empire in person. I found only chaos and corruption, dead whispers. For 1,000 years I was confused, no more. I have gathered the will to return under no name but my own, to champion withered Tevinter and correct this blighted world. Beg that I succeed, for I have seen the throne of the gods, and it was empty.
His speech tells us one huge thing. The seat of the Maker and what they knew as the throne of the old gods was empty. Whatever the Chantry believes about the Blight isn't the truth, and it doesn't seem like anybody knows the truth, actually. This is where a theory starts to spin itself and pieces of the world's lore start to fit together into a very interesting concept, and it might just be what we're looking for. Before the Veil was created, the world was thick with magic. The line between the Fade and the material plane was non-existent. Elves were immortal and had access to power that now only mages have access to, yet not everything was perfect and peaceful. Andruil, a member of the Evanuris, the elves who named themselves as gods and indentured their own people, grew tired of her hunt and sought something more, something dangerous even. Through the codex entry found in the Temple of Mythal at the near end of Inquisition, we learned that Andruil began stalking the Forgotten Ones within the Void. The Forgotten Ones being the polar opposite of what the Dalish believe of being their creators. Beings of rotten fear that live within a part of the Fade that not even Andruil's fellow gods would enter. She made her own kind of the most dangerous game, one that quickly became something out of a Lovecraftian nightmare. The goddess of the hunt and good fortune suffered longer and longer periods of madness after returning. Andruil put on armor made of the void, and all forgot her true face. She made weapons of darkness, and plague ate her lands. She howled things meant to be forgotten, and the other gods became fearful Andruil would haunt them in turn. This is incredibly important when we consider the Blight and where it comes from. Within a place called the Fallowmire, we can find another codex entry about a sort of doomsday cult called the Empty Ones who worship the Blight itself. It's noted that they believed the Blight came from the Void, and we know that the Forgotten Ones lived within the Void. And as well as that, at least one of these entities represented disease. They were creatures reviled within ancient Arlathan, and at the very least, fought regularly with the Evanuris. It's reasonable to think that Andruil was infected with the first strain of Blight when she went hunting for these things that she ought not to have been, and of course began her descent into madness. Going back to Andruil's codex entry, we can find that Mythal spread a rumor about a draconic or serpent-like creature waiting for the goddess, and Andruil took the bait. A battle between Mythal as the creature and her daughter ensued, in which the latter had her memories of the Void and how to get there stolen. Supposedly after this, everything went back to normal. However, this doesn't mean that the Blight was gone from Andruil, and possibly wasn't gone from Mythal either. The spread of the Blight within one person varies and can be incredibly slow depending on who has it. In Dragon Age Origins, if you play as Mahariel, your best friend Tamlin shows up much later within the game and is a ghoul, but he seems to be in the middle of his infection rather than the tail end, which one might expect. He has not yet become a Shriek or even a Hurlock, which most elves with the Blight end up being. We also see a much more prolonged example of the plague, taking Felix Alexius in Inquisition, where it's cited that he has had the Blight since 938 Dragon, and he is still alive in 941 Dragon. Perhaps Andruil, while no longer mad really, was still sick with the Blight. At the very least, in her codex, it's mentioned that a plague had firmly rooted itself within her lands. Points clearly to Andruil possibly being a patient to zero for the Blight itself, for the disease that would eventually attempt to destroy the world, and definitely destroyed hers. In Trespasser, we learn through various spirits, and even Solus himself, that Fen'Harel, Solus, created the veil to lock away the Evanuris when they unceremoniously destroyed Mythal. He did so to save the elves underneath the power of the Evanuris from their endentrament, and hoped that it would somehow make the world a better place for them in the long run. Obviously, from what we've seen in Trespasser and throughout the game so far, that hasn't exactly been the case. Yet that one piece of information does tell us something monumental about the Blight and what it could possibly mean for Veilguard's story. After reading the article by Wesley LeBlanc out of the latest issue of Gameinformer, I am utterly convinced that the Evanuris are the archdemons and also the old gods of Tevinter. It's stated by LeBlanc in a section on battling Darkspawn within Arlathan Forest in the new game. However, with blighted elven gods roaming the world, and thanks to Blight's radiation-like spread, it's a much bigger threat in Veilguard than in any Dragon Age before it. Finally, everything clicked into place. It is fully admitted that the Evanuris have contracted the Blight and are spreading it. The ancient remains of Arlathan can be safely assumed to be the Black City, where the Forgotten Ones and the Evanuris have been locked away in their prison that is now crumbling. Also, according to the article by LeBlanc, Corypheus, the Architect, and all their little Magister friends had been goaded into bringing the Blight to the material world and into an attempt to free the Evanuris from their cage. Each of the archdemons thus far have once been elven mages, corrupted beyond mortal limitations into eldritch abominations that reach through the Fade and into the minds of those that are easily swayed by large amounts of power. They probably possessed dragons, not unlike Flemeth's uncanny ability to turn into one. We all know by this point she was the embodiment of Mythal, and they brought chaos since the Ancient Age. To what ends is anyone's guess, and mine is that we'll see it in Veilguard for certain. We will finally have answers to 15-year-old questions and be able to hopefully put some things to rest. But knowing the BioWare team, they definitely will have something up their sleeves. I, for one, am intensely excited for the next installment, regardless of what some naysayers might be saying on the internet right about now. After all, I didn't become a walking encyclopedia of the lore for this game series for nothing. At the end of the day, I'm just happy to kiss a bunch of hot-looking pixels and cry over a lovingly crafted world. And who knows, I could be wrong. I don't expect any of this to be correct, especially not down to a T. I'm honestly just scratching the surface of what Veilguard could potentially be. It is just a theory. However, I do think it's still incredibly likely, if not true, that Andruil contracted the Blight and then spread it to the Evanuris, essentially corrupting the rest of the Pantheon. Isn't that just terrifying? Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I hope it was a little bit enlightening, or at least entertaining. It's all I can do while we wait for Dragon Age the Veilguard to hopefully drop sometime in the fall. Stay tuned for more of these lore drops, as I'm calling them, and let me know in the comments down below if you liked this. If you did, consider hitting that like button and subscribing. All lore drops after this will be released when I have the time, and will also be released a month early for patrons. And again, apologies for how I sound. I recently sold out a con and unfortunately came into contact with something awful, perhaps the Blight itself. Now I must ascend back into my attic lair and let my voice recover. Please keep 6 feet away from me, otherwise you might grow another set of eyes. Who knows?
Thank you to Jacques, Herald of the Dark Roast, Meg, Exarch of the Golden Egg, High Artisan Anonymous B, Great Alpha Wolf Squilliam William, Nairuz, Seer of Rosy Mercy, Ghost, Infernal Collector of the Damned, Golden Paladin Court, Isabella, Redeemer of Bad Himbos, Keeper of the Lapin Warren, Robin, Most Royal of all the Rats, Ethereal Consort of House Vicarian, Fungal Sovereign Taz, Exalted Curator Wick, the Under-Elf of Delphinia, Paragon of Starlight, an impossible amount of rat babies, Divine Herald Jordan, Estrella, Sage of the Outer Realms, Wretched Sauce of House Worcestershire, Champion Pallypunk of the Immortal Valley, Taylor of Macabre Coney Livery, Eternal Apostle Austin, the Contingent of Fables, the Eminence of Light, Bunny, Exarch of the Ornate Tomb, Harley the Sanguinous, Grand Overlord Silas, Being of Exalted Sunlight, Delegate of Clan Latinurs, Eternal Consul Puja, High Magi Katie, the Herald of Wrens, Knight Susan of the Milkiest Order, and the Great Seer Claire.